we have this trust as scientists, as mathematicians, in human reason. We rely on our human reason to get to our conclusions. Now, in the 1940s, C.S. Lewis was writing about this, and I think people didn't really grasp what he was saying. What he was saying is this. He said, any theory of mind that undermines the validity of human reason cannot be true, because you reach that theory by reasoning.
Okay. Again, this is another heavy one. I want to pause.
Yes, it's beautiful.
These are big ideas, but they're very, very important ideas. He phrased it in such a way, Lewis did, at some point, I can't remember the exact quote, but he says, if the universe made no sense, we should never have discovered that. We never would be able to discover that.
That is part of it. That goes down to the root of it. And the reason for it, and he put it brilliantly, but it wasn't in the center of the big debate, not to the extent it is today. Because what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years is that a very prominent atheist is beginning to use Lewis's arguments. And that has changed the balance completely.
And who is that?
It's Thomas Nagel.
In New York City?
In New York City,
NYU.
That's right. That's right. But if you like, I'll backtrack a bit so that we can unpack this so that it makes a kind of sense.
Yeah.
Lewis is suggesting that if you undermine the validity of reason, your theory's wrong. Now, I'm suggesting that that's why Wigner said mathematics is unreasonably effective, because his worldview, which was atheistic, followed to its logical conclusion, actually destroys rational thought.
Yes.
Now, let me put it in the form of a discussion I frequently have. I tease people, my fellow colleagues. They like being teased, you see. And I say to them, tell me what you do science with. And of course, if they're in the physical sciences, they'll tell me about some very expensive piece of equipment. They've got $1 billion. I said, no, I don't mean that. I mean, oh, they say, you mean my, and they're about to say mind when they remember it's not politically correct to say mind. So they say,
I had no idea things have gotten to the point where it's no longer politically correct to say mind.
oh yes, you've got to say brain. The mind is the brain, because everything is physical.
Okay,
everything can be reduced to physics.
I was going to say let's make sure that that's clear to the audience.
Yes.
Because this is an amazing idea. The idea that the mind is not the same as the brain. The idea that if we were only moist robots, as somebody disgustingly put it,
computing meat.
If that were the case, then in effect, anything like a computer ought to develop consciousness, but nothing that we ever know of except humans has consciousness. So the mind is separate from our mere brains, but it has gotten to the point, and I just wanted to annotate that or underscore that you're saying that in the world of science at Oxford, people are afraid to use the word mind because it implies that there's something beyond the physical, material brain.
But yes, that's right, but it's not all people. If we step back from this, let's put this in a bigger framework. What we're up against in the culture is the logical conclusion of a materialistic view of the universe. See, let's go back to Socrates and Plato, because that'll help make things clear. In the world of their time, about 300 BC or so, the Greeks were divided in their view of the big question. What is the nature of ultimate reality? Now, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle all believed in the gods. They believed there was something more than the physical universe. But Democritus and Leucippus, who were geniuses because they developed the atomic theory. And the atomic theory is one of the most important things ever discovered. Richard Feynman actually made a very interesting statement. He said, if all of science was lost, all of science was lost, but there was one result that we could preserve to pass to the next generation, just one, it would have to be the atomic theory. That everything is made of atoms. Now, atomos means indivisible. We know they're divisible, but the basic idea is there is stuff, very tiny stuff, and everything, but everything is made of that stuff.
But
Now
but I have to say, as proud as I am to be a Greek, the idea that someone in Greece in the 4th century, Democritus, came up with that idea, how in the world, without going into this too much, but how could they back then have come up with this idea?
Well, by a brilliant piece of reasoning. They could take a piece of wood and they could cut it, and it was smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and they reckoned there must be a point at which that process stops by something that couldn't be cut. And this is the basic stuff of reality. But then they made a leap that this would be all of reality. Now that view barrels up through the centuries, and it sits in Oxford. It's in fact the dominant philosophy in Western academia, and we call it materialism. Now there's another version which we call naturalism. They're both atheistic, they both deny anything beyond, but some give a little bit more weight to the existence of mind that's independent of matter. Now, if you are a materialist, then you're going to say that when everything else is said, mind reduces to brain, that's all it is. Brain reduces to physics and chemistry, and all we are is physics and chemistry. Now, back to my little story, you see. Let's suppose that's true for a minute. And I say to my friends, tell me what you do science with. I do it with my brain. Tell me about your brain. I have great fun with this. I love it. Tell me about your brain. What is the brain? Give me the short story. Well, the short story is the brain is the end product of a mindless, unguided process. And I look at them and I smile and I say this, and you trust it. You trust it. Now tell me honestly, and I let this sink in, if you knew that the computer you use in your laboratory or any of the instruments was the end product of a mindless, unguided process, would you trust it? I've never had the answer yes to that, no. And yet, now I say, there's a problem there, can you not see? That you are using something that your theories, that is your philosophy, your worldview of what is ultimate reality, is destroying the very thing you want to trust. I regard that as totally inconsistent. Now, from where I sit, atoms aren't ultimate reality. Ultimate reality is God, who is mind. You've got it exactly the wrong way round. The fundamental stuff of the universe is not mass energy, it's spirit. God is spirit, he's not material. And therefore, I believe mathematics is very reasonably effective because mathematics, being a product of the human mind, is a reflection of the God in whose image we are made. And that is why science rocketed up in the 16th century, because that's exactly what Newton and company believed.